Good morning, good morning, good morning, folks. A merry stupid o'clock to one and all. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. And why are we up so early? Because they decided to throw another random Ray Day and make me work mandatory overtime. And I did not want to have to work like 13 hours tomorrow, so I'm doing the 5 hours today. And oh boy, I find it very interesting because this happened to me yesterday, that you keep getting forgiveness loans for big business, yet those of us who received unemployment during 2020 are now being gouged by our government, no less, to pay back the money, or they will garnish our wages. Is there any particular reason why we are gouging poor people? Those of us who live paycheck to paycheck, who are barely making it as is. You have inflation going on out the ass. We can already barely afford to live, and you want to take what little money we have left? Explain to me how us becoming homeless is going to help our economy. Can somebody explain that shit to me? Now, of course, I will call them and see if I can just simply pay it off with my taxes coming in this year. Keep your fingers crossed for me. I just find it really interesting that the government wants to make their money back from 2020 off of our backs instead of taxing the rich who have the money to give. Me becoming my homeless does not equal you getting your money back, government. You want to know what does? Not gouging us and punishing us poor folks over circumstances we had zero control over. Why are we being punished? I would like to know. I would truly like to know. This is very similar to when they used to use, threats and scare tactics to keep me from applying for full-time employment, but you'll lose your benefits and you'll have to pay everything back. Thankfully, I didn't. It's a shit move when you know people are barely making it as is if they're not already homeless, and you decide to take what little they have left to live on. Government, get your shit together. You're not doing us any favors by forcing us to pay back something we cannot afford. Us becoming homeless is not going to help you make back that money from 2020. You all told us to stay home. You all told us not to work. You all did that. And now you expect us to pay it back. With inflation out the ass. Really? You all need to get your finances together. Because you shouldn't be trying to make back all that money you lost off of the backs of the people who can least afford it. Alright, now that my bitching is over, the usual disclaimers. In the description box, folks, you're going to see the link to the article that the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read. It is written by NeuroClastic, a small non-for-profit started by autistics for autistics, wherein they interviewed and surveyed over 900 ABA professionals from all over the world about JRC's quote-unquote behavioral modification program. Matter of fact, the JRC doesn't want you to read this article so much they have threatened NeuroClastic with a defamation lawsuit if they do not remove it from the website. NeuroClastic has, of course, refused. So you know the drill, folks. Please share on all your social media. Don't forget to read it. Read it again. Read it 3 times. Read it 4 times. Read it 5 times. All right? We also have linked NeuroClastic's public statement in regards to the defamation lawsuit threat, as well as a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding folks in case the JRC has the balls to see through with their threat. We also got the pertinent links to the Agape boarding school situation. Agape boarding school is a Christian-themed boarding school based out of Stockton, Missouri that takes in so-called troubled male teens that has impending folks over 21 substantiated civil lawsuits and allegations leveled against it that are alleging sodomy, other forms of sexual abuse and assault, child abuse, psychological and emotional abuse, child trafficking, yes, even child trafficking, and starvation, and that's just for starters. We've had one former staff member arrested by the FBI, another a doctor who's still on the premises up on multiple substantiated claims of sodomy and sexual abuse of the students there on the premises. You have an attorney general, so with his head lodged so far up Trump's ass, he can't say which way is up or down, who has continued to fumble the ball over and over and over again in regards to protecting these kids. So please share all the articles, newscasts, and reports on all your social media. Send along with it the change.org Shut Agape Boarding School Down petition. Don't forget to sign if you haven't already. We also got the pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign, including Autistic Hoya's massive archive on the subject, the templates, Jennifer Masumba's behavioral sheet, video footage of the 7-hour ordeal suffered by Andre McCollins, and the ever-present and self-explanatory change.org Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition. When we discuss the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of people with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please use your headphones. This channel is marked not for children for a reason. We use profanity and we talk about dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this channel, parental supervision is most definitely advised. It is 5:20 a.m. in the morning, folks, and I'm not even close to remotely being here. So if I stumble over my words, apologies in advance, all right? All right, let me get a drink of this here. Trigger warning. What we're reading through comes from the horse's mouth. Yes, we're talking about Matthew Israel, a champion of gaslighting, doublespeak, deception, a person who engaged regularly in destroying evidence and obstructing justice. So, if you get triggered like I do listening to this man's bullshit, just expect it, all right? Just expect it. All right, so moving on from where we were yesterday. This document will also explain why aversives are a scientifically proven form of treatment and not a form of torture, and why persons with developmental and psychiatric challenges have a right to have the option to choose aversive therapy to cure or ameliorate their behavioral problems. Are you on crack? Doctor, you cannot cure autism. You certainly cannot cure it through behavioral psychology. And why is that, folks? Because you cannot change someone's neurology. You cannot change, doctor, how my mind functions, how it's built, how my neurons fire, okay? That is the stupidest bunch of bullshit I have ever read. It's not science, doctor. It's pseudoscience. In fact, there is no data that backs it up. When they talk about scientific evidence, folks, they're talking about shit from over 40 fucking years ago. If we're talking about outside sources that corroborate this guy's madness, we're talking literally documents from the fucking 70s. What this doctor won't tell you is that medicine and psychology has grown in leaps and bounds Pharmacology has grown leaps and bounds from the 70s when the doctor first formed his bullshit arguments. The only scientific data that backs his bullshit comes from the research papers written by his own clinicians and doctors on his staff. It is not corroborated by any independent institution or researching company or universities or colleges. Nothing, nada, zilch, none outside of the JRC. There is no data. And why is there no data? Well, we covered this when we were covering the FDA hearings. Because every other doctor will not engage in this type of research, doctor, because they consider it unethical and inhumane beyond all reason. We have a document that actually supports this fact. It is not safe. It is not scientifically proven. And it's sure as hell not going to cure anything. In fact, you're going to make psychological issues worse, not better, by means of torture, folks. It's ridiculous. Remember, this is the equivalent of deliberately triggering a PTSD episode in a Vietnam vet and then punishing him for it. Is it going to make it better? Or is it going to send them right back into the psychotic episode that PTSD can cause? Because I can tell you which one it's going to be. It is torture, doctor. When you are punishing a child over things over which they have zero fucking control. Zero control. When you are forcing them to undergo painful skin shock at 3 times more fucking powerful than a police taser, there's a name for it, and it sure as hell isn't treatment. Adversive therapy cannot cure anything. The only thing it might do is make us mask long enough to hopefully at least lower how many times you decide to torture my ass with your fucking shock device. All you're teaching us is masking, doctor. That's all you're doing. You're not curing anything. You're putting Band-Aid over a wound that needs stitches. Can I say that again? You're putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs stitches. Your program doesn't cure shit. And why would we fake a happy face and act like we're not depressed even though we are? Again, it's called masking, folks. It's make-believe. It's the lie that we wear when we go out in public to deal with neurotypical world not built for us so that we are able to survive. It's a lie. That is not the real person. It's exhausting to do. It's emotionally and psychologically draining. It leads to deep, dark clinical depression, which, as we all know, looking at the science, I'm talking real science, doctor, that can lead to lower immune systems and a lowered ability to be able to fight off diseases and pathogens and viruses. And that I can vouch for personally. And I wasn't even put through ABA. When I talk about cure culture, folks, such as what the Autism Speaks likes to tote every year when they take all your money and send it to research a cure that's never going to exist, this is what I'm talking about. They are wanting to force a cure on us no matter what it costs us, the person with the diagnosis. They don't care if we're dead. They don't care if we are psychologically damaged for the rest of our fucking lives. They don't care if they make us suicidal. To them, if we become suicidal because of them, that just reinforces that they're doing the right thing. It's pseudoscience. It's backed by no one within the last fucking 40 some years. 40 some years. You know what is backed, doctor? Non-adversive ABA, even though that's a bunch of bullshit. We'll get into that someday once these bastards go down. What's also peer-reviewed and accepted and encouraged is person-centered planning, what they think is a philosophy with no data. Actually, there's a ton of data, doctor. I know. I went through that data eons ago. It is peer-reviewed and backed up, as is positive behavioral reinforcement without the threat of punishment. Okay? This is the insanity that the JRC is built on. Kind of like the abusive parent with a disabled child. If they just hit us hard enough, they can beat the disability out of us. Matthew Israel wants to shock the disability out of you and punish it out of you. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. The data outside of this insane center does not back him up. The articles that he does cite are so old as to be rendered completely useless towards his argument. The fact that people actually believe to this day that you can torture the disability out of someone, and that not only do people buy it, but that this bastard could actually get government fucking funding for it back in 2020 should disturb you. It should disturb you. You're never going to change our neurology. Okay? His second thing is, but we can at least make them less. For a time. Maybe. I can play devil's advocate here and tell you that severe punishment and torture can stop a behavior while that fear is hanging over their head. When you got that Damocles sword over a person's neck, they will do whatever they have to so that they don't get hurt again. But when that threat is removed, when the person no longer has to fear that they are going to be punished for simply existing, the underlying issues that cause the behavior are still there because they never were dealt with in the first place. Because ABA comes with this idea that is completely contrary to the DSM that is used to diagnose us, that they think they know why. We're trying to get attention. We're trying to manipulate. We're trying to get a certain outcome. It's garbage, folks. It's garbage. It is a complete foreign concept to these people, the idea that what we are actually doing is not trying to get anything. We're acting within our neurology. What is normal for us? What is normal for us? You cannot torture that away. You cannot beat it away. You cannot mask it away. Here's the thing I want to tell people, especially ABA professionals. You can't mask away your disability. You can fake for a decent period of time. You can't mask away your disability. Okay? All you can do is use logic. I want to scream it from like a mountaintop somewhere at the top of my lungs with a bullhorn. Logic. Logical things can be done to address the triggering prevalence, the issue, the triggering issue that causes the behavior, you can get to the root, then alleviate it maybe with reasonable accommodations. What a thought, right? We can't have reasonable accommodations. No, we got to torture it out of you. God help us. I go for the logic-based approach, the person-centered approach, where together a person's treatment team, their social workers, their parents and psychologists, and everybody gets together in a circle of support. Work together to get to the root issues, to work on those issues, provide reasonable accommodations when needed, and assistive devices when needed. And then guess what? It may not completely alleviate the self-interest behavior, which more often than not happens in meltdown, but it reduces significantly the likelihood that those behaviors are to come out. It'll never alleviate them completely. We are what we are. But it can lower it down to a frequency to where we are able to function and live independent lives day to day. Or interdependent, depending on the situation. Some folks are going to need help the rest of our lives. That's okay. This still helps using the logic-based approach as opposed to forcing torture on us. Okay? I'm going to state it for the idiots in the back who should have learned this a long goddamn time ago. There is not, nor will there probably ever be, at least in my lifetime, a cure for autism. You cannot cure it through ABA. You cannot cure it through behavioral psychology. You can't even cure it from what I love to tote the most, which is person-centered planning. We are what we are. There's no amount of abuse, torture, starvation, or sleep deprivation that is going to change who we are, how our minds work. It's never going to happen. The best approach is always putting the patient first. This isn't putting the patient first. This is putting their parents and neurotypical society first. It's about seeking the best things for society, not the person you're actually treating. It's wrong, folks. Ridiculously so. And the fact that this man has the balls to say, but it can cure you. Just like the gluten-free diet can cure me, doctor. Just like if I hadn't gotten my shots, I wouldn't be autistic, according to fucking Jenny McCarthy and Andrew Wakefield. Don't get me started on those two. It's pseudoscience. It is not backed by any real data outside of the JRC. There's a reason why adversives were done away with in larger ABA. It's because they don't work. Not for any length of time. You can't punish the disability out of someone. Ruling through fear will only last as long as that threat hangs over our heads. Fear never works in the long term. And in fact, fear more than likely will cause a person to rebel than it is to follow along with your insanity. A person will only surrender to fear for so long before we start pushing back. And I'm going to close out on that. But people seem to forget is that we autistics are still human beings. We still act as human beings. Like any other human being, fear can only be used on us so long before our human spirit takes over and we fight back. That's how the neurodiversity movement came to be. It's people with autism, people with ADHD, people with Down syndrome, angel man, cerebral palsy. It's about a whole bunch of us fighting back against this insanity. It's the pushback. It's gone from ruling through fear to the point that we feel like we have nothing left to lose. And that is the most dangerous thing of all. When you have not one person, but millions of people with nothing else left to lose, that is a situation people like the JRC and Autism Speaks created. And we're not going away. Now let's go ahead and get off here. We don't get very many views on this channel, especially on this subject. The few that we do tend to get removed from time to time. So please, folks, don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time this morning. And as always, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.